without a loss. He's got some skin in the game. All right. Hey, good morning, Representative Diehl. Thanks for calling the show. I appreciate it.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, Geoff, how's the campaign going?
Well, of course, it's going extremely well after we won the convention a few weeks ago. Overwhelmingly, we are the endorsed candidate from the Massachusetts Republican Party. So now our work is the next 5.5 months is spent purely trying to make sure we defeat Elizabeth Warren and actually put somebody down in the Senate, myself, who's going to work for the people of Massachusetts. That's my track record versus Elizabeth Warren, who is just continually grandstanding, resisting everything down there, voting against bills that are good for our state, and clearly making a path for herself for the White House in 2020, which, of course, I don't think it's going to happen for her, but she seems to think it will. Look, the day she was elected, she put Massachusetts in the rearview mirror. She's looked at our state as a springboard only, and she's voted against things like the tax reform bill that's given 80% of Massachusetts residents tax reduction. It's seen companies hiring more people, giving bonuses, pay increases. Eversource and National Grid have reduced their rates. She voted against it, will not admit she was wrong. And we need someone who's going to actually put Massachusetts first for the first time in a long time. And, that's my job, is to convince folks in the next 6 months that I will be working for them every single day for the next 6 years, something she's not willing to commit to either. She was asked on Meet the Press if she would actually fill out this full 6-year term. 4 times she was asked. She wouldn't answer the question. So I think people have the answer. She's not there for them. She's there for Elizabeth Warren.
We're speaking with Geoff Diehl, who's running for as a Republican for the United States Senate. Geoff, I just want to ask you a very important question then. Are you committing right now to serve a full 6 years, or will you throw your hat into the ring for the presidency?
That's a good one, Chris. No, I've been serving in the legislature on Beacon Hill for the last 8 years. Very proud to represent some great towns and actually do a lot of work across the state. In 2014, I led the ballot question to repeal the index gas tax. That put $2 billion back in people's pockets. In 2015, the Olympics, Boston 2024 decided they wanted to try to get the Olympics to Massachusetts, but the caveat was that the taxpayers would have had to fund the overruns, and the overruns are about $10 billion on average over the last 5 Olympics. That was something I couldn't stand for, so I worked with Evan Falchuk, who had run for governor as an independent, and we put a coalition together to do another ballot question, and 10 days after we filed it, Boston 2024 decided they weren't going to continue with their efforts. So I've been able to effectively make sure that we don't waste people's money, the tax money they expect to goes towards the services they need. And, if I'm lucky enough to be elected in November as your next United States Senator, you're going to get 6 years of somebody working every day for them and not flying around the country trying to make preparations for a presidential run. In fact, Elizabeth Warren was in Ohio just a few weeks ago stumping for a governor's candidate, a Democrat governor's candidate for that state. How does that help the people of Massachusetts? Well, it doesn't, is the answer. In fact, it only helps one person, Elizabeth Warren, who wants to start setting up these swing states to fall her way if she were to run for president. And that, again, is why she's not committed to helping people in Massachusetts. That's the record she has, doing nothing for our state and everything for herself. And so that's why, we've been very successful in raising the awareness, and I think that's why her favorability rating is in the low 50s, around 53%. I mean, that's pretty terrible for someone who's a Democrat from Massachusetts. But we know that this state actually votes what's in their best interest. Ultimately, they put Scott Brown into the Senate when he would be the 41st vote against Obamacare, which never saved people any money. They voted to repeal the index gas tax, and we have a Republican governor now who is a better steward of state services. So the fact of the matter is this state will vote Republican, and they'll vote conservatively when it comes to fiscal issues, and that's why I know we can win this race.
We're speaking with Geoff Diehl, who's running for the U.S. Senate. Geoff, help people out. Tell them what your website is, so if they want to get more information after this interview.
Yeah, they can go to DiehlForSenate.com, which is spelled DIEHLFOR Senate.com. And, of course, if you live in Massachusetts, we'll send you a bumper sticker, get you a free lawn sign. And if you're willing to donate, that would be great. Or if you want to volunteer, that'd be great, too. It's an effort across the state that involves a lot of people. We've had grassroots volunteers with the gas tax, with the Trump campaign, and now with this campaign, and the thousands of people that are supporting me, whether it was at the convention or now in the field doing a lot of events and things like that. That's how you win, is spreading that message door to door. And that's how we're taking our message out there. I've got an RV, a campaign RV that we got off of Craigslist. We're very thrifty with the dollars that we get. And we've used it to get me around the state in front of as many people as possible. But we've got like I said, about 6 months more to go, and I will be out every single day making sure that the people of Massachusetts get someone to go to Washington, D.C. that's going to continue the work, whether it's putting veterans first. And I'll just say this real quickly. Elizabeth Warren, this Memorial Day, she was down in Washington. I'm sorry, not in Washington. She was in New York City the day after Memorial Day to be on talk shows, promote her book that she wrote, the paperback version, I guess. I guess she's already on the discount rack. But she was talking about, things like how China is the role model for government. She was, talking about anything but Massachusetts, not mentioning them once. And she's never marched in, she wasn't marching in any parades in Massachusetts to honor our veterans. And that's just something I can't believe. But, then again, there was a veteran from Lowell who was asking for some help, and it made national news when it took her over 113 days to get in touch or have somebody respond to him with a need that he had. And so, that's Elizabeth Warren's record, is really overlooking the people of Massachusetts. And I'll tell you, when I talk to the people out there, they are so sick and tired of Washington overlooking them, and Elizabeth Warren certainly taking them for granted.
We're speaking with Geoff Diehl, who's running for the United States Senate. He's currently a state representative. But Geoff, now you kicked off in your campaign in numerous locations, but one of them was New Bedford, and you have a unique tie to New Bedford. Tell people here who maybe not know this now, that what your ties are to New Bedford, and then I want you also to comment on what you'll do to help the fishing industry, something where most of us feel Elizabeth Warren has let us down.
Yeah, well, I used to work at Poignant Signs, which is a third generation, soon to be, I think, fourth generation sign company. It's actually the largest sign company in New England, and I was very fortunate to get a job with them. I mean, my wife and I own a small business, and my wife runs that. It's in Hanson, the town of Hanson, and we have 2 daughters, and we know what it's like to try to make ends meet every day and try to keep your business open. But I also was fortunate enough to work for the Poignant Sign Company, and I met a lot of great business owners around the state and also in the South Coast region. So that business really showed me what is important to folks who are trying to keep their businesses open, trying to expand them, and they're just trying to, keep people employed, make sure that they can give their employees raises, and just try to keep government, from getting in their way. That's the thing I want to do, not just around the state of Massachusetts, but for the country, but specifically for New Bedford. The other thing is the fishing industry, obviously, historically, incredibly important for our state. I mean, there's a thing called the sacred cod that hangs in the House chamber where I serve right now. That's how important the fishing industry is. And Elizabeth Warren has been MIA forever on the Sector 9 ground fishing industry issues with Carlos Raffaello's fleet, where they're trying to get it transferred over. If I was the U.S. Senator, I would have been working already every day to make sure those licenses were transferred so that those 250 people who work in the fishing boats that are grounded right now, and all the subsidiary industries, whether it's the net repairs or food processing plants. I mean, all those people are dependent on a lot of that fish coming in and being processed here. I think we're the largest port for poundage coming into the United States.
Correct.
And that's got to mean something to your U.S. senator, but it seems to not mean anything for Elizabeth Warren, who hasn't taken a stand on trying to fix that, and also was totally fine with the creating 5,000 square miles of fishing grounds being turned into monument status and not being able to be fished. She was okay with those Obama regulations that were put in the last year, with no discussions with the fishing industry. So whatever I'm going to do is going to be making sure that we put the fishermen first and make sure New Bedford, that port, becomes even more vital than it is now, because I think that's one of the great industries of our state and one that we really need to support even more. Great.
We're speaking with Representative Geoff Diehl, who's running for the United States Senate. Geoff, you were instrumental in the gas tax. Talk a little bit about what you've already done, so people have an idea of what you will do when you get to Washington.
Well, here's the thing. I think most people expect that their legislators on Beacon Hill are up there to take responsible votes and make sure that, whenever taxes or tax money is spent, it's going where it's supposed to go. And what happened in 2013 under Deval Patrick was that he tried to pass the largest tax increase in the history of Massachusetts. And part of it was this indexing of the gas tax to make the gas tax go up automatically every year without a vote. And that's not how things are done in this state, especially when we're the state of no taxation without representation. That was why we fought a Revolutionary War, let's all remember. And the fact was, this would be the only tax in Massachusetts that would go up without a representative vote. We thought that was wrong. And so I did a lot of research into where the money was going. 50% of the gas tax goes to the T, the MBTA up in Boston, which had $6 billion of deferred maintenance. So the money wasn't even being spent where it was supposed to be spent. And then with the remaining 50% of the gas tax, we spend $675,000 per year per mile in Massachusetts to maintain our roads. We're number 2 behind New Jersey, and the national average is $145,000, like $500,000 less per mile every year. So we were spending a ton of money wastefully on our roadways to begin with, and yet they wanted to have taxpayers basically have to foot the bill for all this excessive and unaccountable spending. So I said, no way, not on my watch, and I worked with grassroots volunteers to put a ballot question together, and we ended up being outspent by $3 million by all the special interest groups. Nobody gave us a chance of winning, and yet we still won that ballot question 53% to 47%, and we actually outperformed Governor Baker in that election cycle by 50,000 votes. So 50,000 more people in Massachusetts thought it was important to make sure they stopped this index gas tax, and we ended up saving the taxpayers $2 billion. That's what the Boston Globe blamed me for as far as lost tax revenue. $2 billion. That went back into people's pockets, with the money they spend every day to get to and from work, and it also helped businesses that have a lot of transportation costs involved with them. So, look, it was a great win, and it was something that sent a message to Beacon Hill, and it's a great example of why, down in Washington, D.C., you can trust me to be your best steward of the tax dollars that you send to Washington to make sure that they're spent correctly.
We're speaking with Geoff Diehl, who's running for the United States Senate. Geoff, you have the endorsement of Sheriff Tom Hodgson, the man I call America's sheriff, and I think primarily because of your stance on immigration, you have the sheriff with you, but you also have a woman who really knows the real danger and has paid the ultimate price. Her son did, certainly, for illegal immigration, for open borders, for the things that Liz Warren supports. Talk about who's supporting in your position on illegal immigration.
Sure. Well, Maureen Maloney's son, Matthew Denise, was killed in the town of Milford by somebody who was here illegally with a criminal background. He should have never been on our streets of Massachusetts. He should have been deported. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is a trend in our state of cities and towns declaring themselves sanctuary status. In fact, just a week ago or so, the Massachusetts Senate voted to have in our budget, the annual budget, a sanctuary status amendment, and it should never have been in that budget, but it did get passed, and of course I'll be voting and speaking against that when it comes to the House for a resolution in the House before it goes to the governor's desk. But the fact of the matter is, Maureen, her son, like I said, should never have been lost. I was very honored that she was one of the nominees for me at the convention that we won overwhelmingly a few weeks ago, and she understands that I understand, along with Sheriff Hodgson, that what we have to do is secure our border to make sure that, first of all, we don't have people coming in across our border illegally with criminal backgrounds. So we've got to build that wall. I went down to El Paso a couple of months ago. I looked firsthand to see where the gaps are, where the funding stopped. Under the Obama administration, there's gaps as wide as 8 miles long where illegal immigrants come across. They're being muled across by what are called coyotes. And also drugs are coming across the border at the same time. So we're not only having illegal immigrants come in, which, by the way, cost our state about $1.8 billion every year. That's our cost for supporting those here illegally. But we're also seeing drugs like fentanyl and heroin come in, and that's really killing the people on our streets. So it's a financial issue, it's a public safety issue, and, of course, an epidemic with the heroin crisis and the opioid crisis in our state. It's just unbelievable. So build the wall, end chain migration, create merit-based immigration so that we can expedite the naturalization process. I mean, we want immigrants here. We just want to make sure they do it legally. And at the same time, we've got to prohibit sanctuary cities. I agree with the president on holding back funding to their cities and towns if they don't comply with allowing local law enforcement to work with federal officials to basically deport those who are here illegally with the criminal backgrounds. And I'll just add this one other thing, Chris. Sure. I went out with a state police gang unit a few weeks ago, and I saw firsthand the work they're doing to get into cars with drug dealers. These guys have guns and drugs, and it's brave police officers that become undercover officers that go in these cars. They do these buys, and they get them arrested, and they try to make sure that when they go to court, they're convicted, and they ultimately, if they're here illegally, get deported. But then you have judges like up in Salem, this Judge Tim Feely, who put a heroin dealer, a well-known heroin dealer in the community of Peabody. The community wanted him arrested and off the streets. He put him back on the streets by saying that he was just trying to earn a living for his family by selling drugs. Well, that is unbelievable. So our judges are also part of the problem, and we need to make sure that judges like Tim Feely are taken off the bench. I mean, this problem is legislators that are approving sanctuary status, and then it's judges that are revolving doors for these criminals that are here illegally that should be deported. That person that was put back on the street also is an immigrant and should have been deported because of the crimes he committed. So the judge didn't want to give him a prison sentence because that would have triggered his deportation. He said it would have been catastrophic to his family. Well, how about the families of all of those people who've died in Massachusetts? 2,000 deaths a year in Massachusetts with overdoses. That's catastrophic. And so this judge was wrong. We need to make sure we get people like him off the bench as well. There's a lot of work to be done between now and November, and I certainly hope that people get out there and get informed, and, of course, come and meet me wherever I'm going, because that's how you can find out what's really happening in our state and why my Senate campaign is going to be so important, not just about getting rid of Elizabeth Warren, but also sending a message that, you know, Massachusetts is going to put its own citizens' safety and personal finances first once again. We're speaking with Geoff Diehl. Geoff, before I let you go, let the folks find out what your schedule is by going to your website. What is your website? Well, that's the best place to go is DiehlForSenate.com, which is DIEHL and then FOR Senate.com. So DiehlForSenate.com. And what they'll do is they can see on that website a way to get a free bumper sticker, a free lawn sign. If you want to donate, great. Obviously, many hands make light work. But I'd also love you to volunteer. So there's a button where you can click to become a volunteer for the campaign. And there's also links to my Facebook and Twitter page. And that's where you're going to see all the events that we put up all the time. And people can say they're going to come to the event, you know, click on the button there, share it. You know, social media is such an important tool. So if you also have a chance to look at Facebook and Twitter, Diehl for Senate, like those or follow those, and then spread the message, because, again, your voice is actually going to be heard in November like it has been for the last several years. We've been able to get things done by putting the public first and making sure that activists across the state actually, you know, get their way, whether it was Scott Brown in 2010 being the 41st vote against Obamacare, whether it was the gas tax, or whether it was, you know, even making sure that Donald Trump got a real strong showing in Massachusetts. You know, that's the kind of thing that we want to make sure Massachusetts is known for, is getting the word out and getting active and getting the representation they deserve. Hey, thanks a lot, Geoff Diehl, for giving us a call. We'll speak to you real soon. Good luck, my friend. Thank you, Chris, and thanks to your listeners for listening. I look forward to seeing you all. All right, thanks a lot. We're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll go to the phones. Here, that was Geoff Diehl. Of course, if you missed this, any of this interview, you'll be able to catch it on WBSM.com or on a YouTube site, which you go to YouTube, then look up WBSM on there, and you can look at me. If you've never seen me, it's amazing. Anyway, I don't know how amazing or in which way it's amazing, but I've been told it's amazing. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.